Hi, welcome and namaste to the Yoga Out of the Box podcast. My name is Marv, and on this podcast, we try to make yoga as accessible as possible for everyone. That means that we bring it from like an ancient tradition to a modern kind of lifestyle with a toolkit you can use for your day-to-day life to feel the best and to make the most out of your life. And for me, a big part of this is even not just the practice on the mat. Nowadays, even in the West, the people are just about like the asana practice and like what they do in their yoga classes. But it's not about this fancy kind of posture. They can be part of that, but in the depth, yoga is like about a lot of philosophy. And today's episode's guest shares such a lot of like really deep philosophical stuff. And this was a reason I was reaching out to him, because I saw a lot of his content and I was like, okay, wow, I don't see the direct connection. He's never talking directly about yoga, but I feel the spirit. I feel this kind of like impulses, and I really connect with that. And I was like, okay, I need to get Ben Duffy on this podcast. And I was super happy that that worked out like super quick. And we had like a super nice conversation. I think we could have talked like 1 more hour at least. Ben already said he is down for another episode. So guys, let me know if you want to hear more about him and his story in the comments under this episode on Spotify. And yeah, we had like a great bunch of topics. We had like even discussed like the dark side of life and the hard times. And I think this is a topic which is talked too less about in the modern yoga well-being community. And so let me know your thoughts. Consider to leave a good review on the podcast player of your trust and share this episode with family and friends who could be interested. Thank you so much, and right into the conversation with Ben. Hey Ben, how are you doing?
I am doing well. Like I was telling you before, I just ran my first ultra marathon a couple days ago, so my legs are a little sore, a little tight, but I'm feeling really good. How are you
Amazing, bro.
doing?
I'm pretty fine. I teach my last class for today, so I'm fully here with my present, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation. I think we can go into the ultra marathon for sure later, because I would have like a few questions about that.
Mm-hmm.
For the people who may not already know you in the audience, could you shortly introduce yourself with a kind of bit of backstory?
Yeah. So my name is Ben Duffy. Currently in graduate school at a school in Boulder, Colorado called Naropa, which is a Buddhist-based university. The program I'm in is contemplative psychotherapy and Buddhist psychology. It's a clinical mental health track, and I am just very passionate about all things pertaining to spirituality, specifically Buddhism, meditation, the yogic path too, exercise, psychological well-being, really anything that improves quality of life, and really asking questions like, how do we actually live an optimal life? What's involved in that? Like physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. Like how do we really live to our truest potential and open up, I guess, the doors that maybe we don't see.
I think this is already like the great answer for the question you asked me earlier, why I
Mm.
reached out for you, because you're
Mm.
not like the typical yogi content on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's so much more to yoga than just the physical practice. And when I saw your content, it really resonated with a lot of my values and a lot of things I see. And yeah, maybe we can go a bit deeper into. So
Yeah.
how did you had like your first kind of spiritual experience, or how did you get like into this kind of topic? Do you hear me?
No, I missed a good chunk of that. Say that one more time.
No worry. So how did you get first into like spirituality, or how did you found your interest in that?
Yeah. So first, I would say this was when I was in undergrad. I just got into psychedelics, like mushrooms, eating
Mm-hmm.
acid, just having fun with my friends, going to live shows, spending time, camping in the backcountry in the mountains out here in Colorado, and really opening to different ways of seeing the world, of seeing myself, of relating to
Mm-hmm.
the mind. When I was doing that, I found various quotes or just little nuggets of information from, yogic traditions or mystical Christianity and Buddhism. And I started to really resonate with these spiritual traditions, all sorts of them. And Then I went through these waves of depression, anxiety, just like mental health collapses when I was really first opening with these psychedelic experiences. And I was going from this high to this low, to this high to this low. And
Mhm.
eventually I realized I can't keep doing this. And at this point, I had no real, like, formal yogic practice or meditation practice. I was just eating a lot of mushrooms with my friends, basically.
Yeah.
And then once I graduated from undergrad, I was going through these, again, waves of depression. I was like, I can't keep doing this. Like, and I saved a bunch of money and traveled to Asia. And first thing I was like, I need to do something different. So I bought a bike, like some crappy like Walmart mountain bike, and I rode from Saigon to Hanoi in Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and this whole time though, I was like still dealing with this experience of depression. So I was doing this crazy
Mhm.
adventure, and like I couldn't even enjoy it because I was stuck in my head. So I was like, and I, again, after I biked across the country, I was like doing a work exchange as a kayak guide in Cat Ba Island, which is off the coast. Absolutely gorgeous. And again, I couldn't even enjoy it because I was just stuck in my head. And
Mhm.
again, I had these little bits of information about like Buddhism, Hinduism, all of these different traditions that really resonated. And I was like, okay, I was right next to India. So I was like, people go to India to get like enlightened. That's the spot for it. So I'm just going to fly
Mhm.
over there and see what happens. So I took a flight out there and I took a bus to Rishikesh, which is one of the holy cities in India, which is in northern India. And I went to this ashram called Pulchati, a Shiva ashram that is in the foothills of the Himalayas. And I was supposed to be there for a
Yeah.
week for a yoga meditation retreat. And I was stuck there for actually like 3, 4 months because I was there right as the country closed down because of COVID. So this was a serendipitous sort of event where I was forced to just sit at this ashram for like 4 months, meditate, do yoga, eat Ayurvedic food, wake up at dawn, go to bed at
Mhm.
dusk. And it really showed me a lot and showed me the value of meditation, showed me the value of yoga, and specifically also seeing a very different culture than I'm accustomed to in the West. Like India is a different
Mhm. For
planet,
sure.
and being able to break out of this conditioned view that's like, oh, this is how the world is, this is how everyone seems to see it, and it feels so real until you go somewhere that's very different, and then you're like, oh, not everybody lives with these views, lives in this world,
Yeah.
so that really turned me on to it. And then when I finally came back to the States, I worked on some farms. I lived at a Sikh community and did a bunch of kundalini yoga there. Again,
Mhm.
worked on a farm for a season, and then I spent 8 months at two different Zen centers and really wanted to focus on sitting meditation, just bare bones being with the mind. And at this point, I was not doing any substances, any psychedelics. I was literally just stone cold sober, just meditating, doing yoga, trying to figure this thing out so that I didn't have to live, in this state of suffering
Mhm.
forever. And over time at the Zen centers, especially, I started to get a lot of clarity, just seeing how the mind functions, seeing, how, especially with Buddhism, how our clinging starts to construct experience, starts to create experiences of pain and of suffering out of thin air. And if you let go, and this is harder, easier said than done, if you can let go,
So much
this
harder. Yeah.
it's a practice. Then seeing how you can start to control the mind and control our experience of suffering. So that's, I guess, a long-winded answer for how I got onto this path. But yeah, now here I am.
But man, that's so interesting because I think even here a lot of people can relate to that. Let's take a step back because I find it super interesting because, like I said before, at least where I come from in like central Germany, a lot of people nowadays come to yoga from like the just physical aspect. They do a yoga class in the fitness center, or like they think yoga is just for stretching or to calm their mind after a busy day of work when they have like their office. But I see like for a lot of people to get deeper to another level of the yogic practice, like in the philosophical part, or like going deeper in their own mind and having a maintenance to have like their own meditative practice is like a whole different thing. And like
Mm-hmm.
you said now, for you it was like the total difference. You went like
Mm-hmm.
through an extended state of mind and come from the whole opposite. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, exactly. And like you said, I mean, Yoga in particular, it's something that attracts a lot of people for various
Mhm.
reasons, at least off the bat. For the physical part of it, stretching feels good. I found stretching
Yes.
helps loosen up the mind, obviously. But then when you get into the like more conceptual aspect of it, there's
Hmm.
so much benefit because again, you start to deconstruct the conditioned beliefs that create our experience here. The conditioned beliefs that we all take for granted, we all assume to be so real, you can start to question them through just exploring
Hmm.
these different traditions. And then this thing that we take to be as very solid and very real, which is our experience here, which is
Yeah.
based off of conceptual understanding. When we can start to deconstruct that, we can start to break the chains, start to tear down the cages that are, again, keeping us, again, chained to certain ways of
Hmm.
seeing ourselves, certain ways of seeing the world that are potentially inducing experiences of suffering and limiting our experience of freedom. Our experiences of beauty, even, can be limited through our conceptual notion of this world and of life. So again, that
Hmm.
conceptual understanding in yoga and Buddhism and other various traditions can help to expand the mind's ability to see through what we've been conditioned to
Yeah.
believe.
It's, I think in one of your content pieces you said it's like the main focus where you shift your awareness and where
Mm-hmm.
you like start seeing through stuff, right? And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I really like the part about India because you're absolutely right. I think everybody who have went to India and see like coming out of this Western stable society, everything is so fixed, so normed, and you think, oh yeah, this is how the world went, and
Mm-hmm.
then you come there and everything changes like
Mm-hmm.
absolutely
Have you
from
been to
bottom to
India?
down. Yeah, I've been there multiple times now.
Yeah.
And so I love Rishikesh, even if it's
Yeah.
now like a lot of people going there, but it
Yeah.
still has this kind of experience, right? And like you
Mm-hmm.
said, it's more in the end about the whole experience, right? Which is like
Mm-hmm.
really
Mm-hmm.
serving you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would love to go back and explore more. Again, when I was there, the whole country closed down, so I was like
Yeah.
sort of stuck. But yeah, no, and again,
This has to be like even a super frightening experience, right? Being like in
honestly, at that
such
point in
kind
my
of country.
life, the person I am, I was just desperate to be like, I need to find an answer to
Wow.
this. Like, nothing in the Western mental
Hmm.
health field was helping me, like, consistently. Like,
Wow.
I didn't want to take meds. I was working, like, with a therapist that, like, didn't really help. I was like, something just doesn't
Hmm.
feel right. And I went out there, and again, it just loosened my whole kind of perception of myself, of the world, seeing something so, um, where it's like,
Hmm.
life, at least in the States, it's very, you know, in a lot of ways, depending on where you're at, capitalism is huge, like it is in everywhere,
Hmm.
basically in the globalized world. Materialism, and it sinks into your system. Is like, is this actually all that matters? Because if it is, like for me, I was like, I don't fucking care about this stuff. Like, I'm sorry, like this doesn't do it for me. So if this is it, like
Yeah.
I just want to, and then
Is
it's like
something
being
wrong
able,
with me, right?
yeah, exactly, and that feeling of being an outsider, which I think is
Mm-hmm.
interesting because, when there's something in you saying, hey, this can't be it, but yet the culture is saying, this is all there is. All you got to do is make more money and have more power, and then you'll be happy. But there's
Mm-hmm.
something in you that says, nah, that's not it. I already know that. And listening to that, even though it might make you feel like an outsider, is like, again, listening to that, it's like a voice in you, it's a knowing, it's your heart is trying to tell you something, like look somewhere please, and following that, it's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. I think just nowadays, and I think even again for this society at this point, like where you have like social media and all of these inputs coming in every day, it can be so hard because the noises around you are so loud every day. And yeah, it's the same in Europe, basically. If you grow up
Mm-hmm.
in Germany, I think it's really similar that like the culture is like really primed. Everything has to work in a certain kind of, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody is telling you because it was working all the time like this, right? Nobody
Mm-hmm.
had to make like, had to think about the individual goals or about the individual luck or the individual like where I should live,
Mm-hmm.
where I want to live. So I
Mm-hmm.
think breaking out of this is super interesting, and that brings us back to the point. How did you like? first started to hear
Hmm.
your own voice and like said, okay, maybe this
Wow.
is what I really need?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, again, it was like a lot of pain of listening to the voices, like my parents, the culture
Mm.
being like, all right, just get your degree, make a bunch of money, then you'll be secure and happy. And I knew that wasn't for me. I was like, I could already just tell, like, that's not gonna do it.
Yeah.
So I was like, where is
That's
it?
so it's so interesting that security and happiness are so like
Mm,
framed together in the Western world, right?
hmm. Right. And it's like, what even is security? Like, at the end of the day, like, I could die today. I could get hit by a bus. I could have a brain aneurysm. It's all possible. And then,
Mm-hmm.
so at that, just realizing that, not trying to push away something like death or something like pain, realizing this is a part of life. Hey, I could lose my job.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we could get, the US could get invaded by China. This might happen. Who knows? And it's like, and like that's a part of it. And being able to be open to these possibilities of, pain, of difficulty, of hardship, instead of just
Mm-hmm.
like really just trying to fall into this sort of soft hedonistic lifestyle that is being spoon fed to people, realizing
Yeah.
life is hard. Everyone dies, as the Buddha said. Old age, sickness, and death is a
Mm-hmm.
part of this experience, and no one can escape it. If you're lucky enough to make it to that age. And so when you realize that, there's almost a relaxation. Like, hey, this place is going to be hard. This life is going to be hard. And this is, again, in Buddhism, one of the three marks of existence is dukkha. This is suffering. This is inescapable. It's a part of this
Mm-hmm.
place. And I found that when I can accept that suffering is a part of life, that pain is a part of life, in a sense, then actually I'm lowering my resistance so that when the pain arises, I'm not resisting it so hard. I'm not saying this shouldn't be here. I'm saying, oh, this pain has a place. And when I say
Mm-hmm.
that, when you hold that view, you're lowering your resistance. And when you lower your resistance to difficult experience, the difficulty and the intensity of that difficulty lowers too. It's so interesting. It's this one Zen teacher, Shinzen Young, says it like this: our experience of suffering is equal to pain multiplied by our resistance to that pain. So if you take that equation,
Oh,
pain
this
is a
is good
part of
one.
life,
Yeah,
isn't it? And so if
definitely.
pain's a part
Yeah.
of life, we have control over how much we're resisting the difficulty, the pain in life. And knowing that when you resist it more, whether it's a breakup or if it's even physical pain, cognitive pain, the more that you resist something, the more you're amplifying the intensity of that pain, of that
Of
suffering.
course. You shift your
And
awareness again to that, right?
exactly, exactly. So again, this is something really interesting, and there's like in realizing it's almost like a paradox in realizing that in a way you can't escape the pain. You let go of trying to. And when you let go of trying to, the experience of the pain starts to decrease and starts to fade actually because you're
Mm-hmm.
open to it. You're allowing it to be here instead of pushing it away saying this is not allowed. And that's when things started to change for me, is like really like saying screw what everyone else thinks. I don't care. Like in India, for instance, the context, I basically had no money. I was helping to build a hospital at this ashram in exchange to stay there because I was there for like 4 months and didn't have the money. And I just graduated undergrad and got a degree in a
Mm-hmm.
field I didn't want to work in. And I had no money, and like my parents were begging me to come home because this is right as COVID was starting to pop off in 2020. And basically I was like torn because everyone was leaving this ashram. Like I was like one of the last people there. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I don't want to leave India before I found this thing called enlightenment because I'm going to leave empty handed and I'm just going to go back. I'm going to be depressed. I'm going to be a loser. I
Yeah.
won't have a job. I'm going to have to live with my parents. And I was like, fuck, I can't do this. And like, I had this break. I remember I was like moving pipes or something to build this hospital, and I just dropped it and just broke down in tears because I was just like so torn. I was like, I don't want to leave, but I don't want to be a loser. I need to find this thing called enlightenment. And I remember I
Mm-hmm.
broke down, started crying. I was like, you know what? I don't care if I'm a loser the rest of my life. I don't care if I have to live with my parents. I'm done hating my experience. I'm done hating myself. If I have to be depressed for the
Wow.
rest of my life, so be it. And again, that was the moment when I lowered my resistance, when I was just like, screw it. If I'm depressed forever, it is what it is. And from that, interestingly, the depression over months started to fade. And this was intense depression. It was like I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
leave my bed. I was sleeping 18 hours a day. Like the person that I am today was not even comparable to that guy. That guy couldn't make eye contact with people because I was so dissociated, so in my head. And interestingly, it was once I could accept my depression, this is how it
Mm-hmm.
is right now, that's when it started to be able to move. And there's something beautiful in that as far as, and I've again applied this to my life since then. When there is difficult experience, can I open to it? Can I let it be here?
Mm-hmm.
Can I give it space? And if I can, the experience lessens in its impact on my life. It doesn't handicap me in a sense. And also, it
Mm-hmm.
moves on. Whether it's depression, whether it's sadness, whether it's anger, give it space. Honor it in a
Yeah.
sense. Honor this feeling, this emotion, and then it will move through you. So,
You. This is your short reminder to do your karma yoga today. Just leave a good review on the podcast player of your trust. Just like share this episode with family or friends or anyone who could be interested. Share it on Instagram in your story. This is not like super bad. Not for you, and it's great for us. Thank you so much for considering that. I know it always takes a bit of effort, but it's just a few seconds for you, but it really helps me out. Thank you so much from my heart to you. Back to the episode with Ben.
yeah.
Wow, I'm super happy for you, man. That's like sounds for like a real path you did, and it's like amazing. I think it's like a wrong image, which is even like in the Western world that we always try to have this kind of. We try to avoid pain by any chance, and we try to avoid like every kind of uncomfortable situation, and we think that obstacles shouldn't be part of our way, right? This is like what I really so the yoga I'm teaching is like more on the stronger hand side. So it's like an Ashtanga style. And it's something like really similar. You have to go through stuff which is like preparing you for like stress, and the real challenges and the real obstacles will always wait for you. And we all have to go through all of this. I think Nietzsche said this, that we have to go through all of these emotions. It doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
what kind of decision we take,
Mm-hmm.
right? We have to go through it. And so we have
Mm-hmm.
to accept it, and we have to just go through. And I think what's really interesting in your story is that you really honored even the shadows and even the dark stuff, because this made you who you are today. And I think this is like really interesting, because a lot of people always try to avoid it or make it like nowadays. No, you always have to be feeling good, and it's always about like mindfulness and well-being, but nobody's talking about the bad stuff, and that it's
Mm-hmm.
also part of the journey.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Yeah. Well said. And that I think is what I think defines me and my path in a lot of ways is honoring that darkness, saying again that it has a
Mm-hmm.
place in our experience. And when you look at it critically, when I look back at my life, that depression, that anxiety forced me to find answers, find something that works. And it made me who I am. I would not
Mm-hmm.
trade that for the world at this point. I'm so thankful for that darkness in my life. Given when I was in it, I would probably be like,
Yeah.
nah, fuck that. Let me out of here. But like now that I look
Wow.
back and having navigated that darkness, I feel
Mm-hmm.
so thankful. And realizing that that pain, that difficulty, it's teaching you something. If there is that pain mentally, for instance, it's a product. If it's especially at that level where it's handicapping you, what are you resisting right now?
Mm-hmm.
What are you not allowing into your experience? And if you can start to pay attention to see what am I resisting in my life, can I open to that? Whether there's a part, maybe a self-image, a part of you that's dying and falling away. Are you clinging to it? Is it time to let it go? Is it time to let a relationship go? Is it time to let an old job go? Is it time to move somewhere new? What are you? Is there resistance? And just feeling it out and knowing that this pain, this discomfort is, it's almost like a message. It's like communication from, in my mind, something beyond us. If source could
Yeah.
speak to you, it would be through the feeling body. When something feels off, listen to that. Try to tune into like, why am I feeling so weird? Why am I in this rut? Listening, why is that? And then you'll probably get an answer if you keep listening. And so it's a beautiful thing to honor that darkness, to really open to it, to listen to it, and that it starts to
Mm-hmm.
guide you. I've
So if you would or if you had to give like a kind of advice to somebody who's maybe, because I think a lot of people nowadays are in like a phase where it's like sometimes not super obvious what they have to do or what's
Mm-hmm.
making them feel off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like you said, like you had the same situation. You just graduated, everything was fine. Your family said, "Yeah, just move on, take your career path, and hey, everything should be fine. You have money in the bank, you're
Mm-hmm.
secured, you live like in the West. What do you wish for? You should be happy." What would
Mm-hmm.
be your advice to people?
Mm. Mm. I
It's a
mean,
hard one, I know, but
it is. It depends on the
it's a big
person, but
one.
obviously
Yeah.
sink into that feeling of like, what is it? Is it discontentedness? Is it anger? Is it sorrow? Is it fear? Like, what am I actually feeling right now? And being curious about it. Again, opening with curiosity to be like, what's actually happening for me right now? Why am I so
Mm-hmm.
low energy? Where is this depression coming from? Is it, just slowing down the mind maybe? And
Mm-hmm.
again, a lot of this, it comes down to a feeling of surrender. That is the ultimate letting go, the ultimate letting go of resistance. I'm not trying to make anything
Yeah.
any other way. I surrender to this life. And there's something beautiful about life will inevitably bring you to your knees. It will.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a beautiful thing because it's forcing you to surrender. That's why the concept of surrender is so important in like Islam, for instance. You're surrendering to the
Mm-hmm.
will of Allah and you pray 5 times a day, bowing your head to surrender. And it's a beautiful thing to be able to let go like that. And it's easier said than done. So it's like you can't try to, because if you're trying to let go, you're actually not letting go.
Yeah.
It's like a little
You're
puzzle.
always working on it.
You're
Mm-hmm.
right. There's like it's almost like it's more of a feeling of just like the grip just loosens. You're like, "Oh, whatever." It's kind of like that's how it is
Yeah.
for me. It's like, oh, whatever.
I
It's like,
I see myself in that absolutely. So this was how I first ended up in doing yoga, because for me it was, for example, super. I have like a soft kind of ADHD, and it was always like super hard to sit and meditate, even if I was interested in it. And
mm-hmm,
so I needed to have being fully done with my practice, being really exhausted, and then I could like lay in shavasana. And even today, I see
mm-hmm,
people like, you know, they should. The only thing they have to do in shavasana is really surrendering. They should not meditate. They should not focus on anything, but they should just surrender into it. And I think it's so interesting to see that this is like the hardest practice for most of them, to
yeah.
just let
I mean, it is, and that's life because like we have
go.
this idea of what we want, what our mind wants. This would be the life that I would choose, and I'm gonna work to try to make that happen. And that's a beautiful thing that I think needs to be honored, but we need it to be balanced between a hefty dose of letting go. It's in my mind the
Mm-hmm.
the value of the middle way. Because if you just let go, if you're just like, I don't even care what happens to me. I mean, that's a beautiful path. That's, how the Buddha lived in a sense, how Christ lived. It's how the sadhus in India live. It's a radical
Mm-hmm.
letting go. But then there's also a beauty in really working with this life and saying, hey, I have this image, this vision for what I want my life to be. And do I want to work for it? Because if I just say, oh, I'm perfect, it's all okay, I'm perfect the way that I am, this is true, this is
Mm-hmm.
valid, this is a fact. But if you put too much of your awareness on that, it's easy to fall into complacency, I've found. And if you ask yourself the
Mm-hmm.
question honestly, is that all that I want? Is all that I want to be at peace? If you're honest with yourself, most people would say, there's more to life than that. There's beauty
Yeah.
in the struggle. There's beauty in the growth. There's beauty in the exploration into yourself, into life. And so then balancing it with a dose of growth, exploration, of pushing
Mm-hmm.
yourself into new territory, whether it's a new practice, moving to a new place, finding a new self identity, something that suits you
Mm-hmm.
more. This takes work. And it's like we can't do this from a complacent place. And there's an element too, which is interesting, of dissatisfaction, of lack, of dukkha. Actually, this is what's very interesting for me, is like, in order to push ourselves to become new, to grow, it's almost like there's a necessity for some amount of dissatisfaction to be present. And there's something,
Wow.
again, beautiful in that. And again,
Mm-hmm.
if we resist the suffering, the dukkha, the dissatisfaction, we make it way worse. But if we can open, I know I can be better. And I have this vision and I want to be that. And I know I'm not there yet. If we can open to that and allow that space in our system, we can, again, work with that sort of discontentedness, that sort of suffering, even that can then push us to become this new version of ourselves, to find new levels of peace, of beauty, of service to the world. This takes an element of dukkha. So again, this almost moves beyond traditional Buddhist dharma, where the goal
Mm-hmm.
is objectively to end suffering. I mean, at least in Theravadan Buddhism for the individual and Mahayana Buddhism. But this is opening in a different way to allow suffering to be there, realizing that the end of suffering, the end of clinging, is a beautiful view, but it's not objectively the only way to live. It's a beautiful
Yeah.
view and a beautiful life to have access to. Absolutely. And I've tasted it in certain degrees to know that it exists. I've loosened to the degree to where I'm like, oh, if I have to, I know I can really do the practices, live a life very simply to be able to actually let go to that degree. But while I'm here, I mean, I'm 28 years old. I still want to explore this world, see what this life, see what I can do with this life, see what I can
Mm-hmm.
experience, accomplish, how I can serve us. And that's, again, a beautiful thing that takes a certain amount of, again, pushing myself. So this is,
Mm-hmm.
again, an interesting view: is, are we open to a little bit of discontentedness in our experience so that we can grow?
Yeah, for sure. What really resonates with me is like even this worldview. I was always asking myself this question. I was even asking this question once my guru. And is there something like enlightenment in this world? Is
Mm,
it really accessible for like, this podcast is about making yoga like demystical, make it more like accessible for everyone. Like
mm-hmm.
people, even in the West, or people like just having like a basic 9 to 5 job and like using it as a kind of toolbox. And I think what you really do with all of this is like that you really make it more easy for people to understand that it's not all everything is like super shiny and super glowy and everything is fine. And what brings me back is that I'm always like, I don't know if I really want to be enlightened. I don't want
Mm,
to sit like
mm,
a baba in a cave, and meditate
mm-hmm.
and just being maybe having no
Mm,
fear, having no anxiety anymore, but even not enjoying life anymore. On the other hand,
yeah, yeah.
what really sticks to me is like, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, no, no. I mean, I think
Eh,
that's a beautiful view. And again, I don't think there's any objectively better or worse view. I think you have to, again, listen to this voice inside yourself and be like, what life do
mm-hmm.
I want to live? And if you really want to end dukkha, you want to release
Yeah.
clinging, find that peace, freedom, follow that. But know that that's not objectively better than any other life. You have to listen to yourself. There's a beauty in this theater of life, the lila they call
Yeah.
it, right? It's a
Yeah.
theater,
Yeah.
and there's certain sort of scenes that can only be experienced with a certain amount of pain, a certain amount of hardship. And when you see it like that, we can open to the beauty of the pain, the beauty of losing people you love, the beauty of the fleeting nature of this life, knowing that we all have to
Mm-hmm.
die. There's a
Mm-hmm.
beauty in that, and it's profound. And it's, again, they're asking the question also, what is enlightenment? When we say enlightenment, what do we mean? Because different people
Mm-hmm.
will actually tell you different things. So it's like, whose enlightenment are we actually referring to? So it's just an interesting question to open and be like, what
Yeah,
does
for
that
sure.
actually mean? What does it actually look like? What image do I have about it? Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think even so, to refer back as well to Nietzsche, who said, the principle of amor fati. It's like
I do not.
it's like a philosophical, so more of the Western philosophical part. But he is preaching that life will always have this highs and lows. There's like I said, there's always this frame of emotions. You have to go through all of it. And the only point where you reach the state of like having not the positive emotions are not the negative emotions anymore, is when you die. So to make the fullest out of your experience and to live the fullest, you can't really love if you have never had a breakup. You can't really have this kind of like really loving independently when you haven't had this attachment beforehand. And so it's like more, like you said, everything can become a practice, right? To just like not just being on your yoga mat and doing all the stuff or sitting like in meditation for hours. It's more about like exploring life and exploring all these different experiences you can have and making everything great out of it. And so I think it's super interesting to see, okay, what could enlightenment mean for different kind of people in different kind of situations?
And there's something beautiful, like, again, like the question, what is enlightenment? When the Buddha became enlightened, he said the whole world too has become enlightened, and everyone in it. And in a sense, when you see the necessity of duality, that I need pain to really know pleasure, then you realize the necessity of the darkness, the inescapability of the darkness, and the beauty of it. And you know, in this yin and yang kind of life, when you're in the darkness, what's right around the corner? It's that light. And when you're in that light, what's right around the corner? It's that darkness. And we're, in a sense, through our clinging, we're choosing to engage. We're making the choice that I want to be a part of this pain, a part of this pleasure. And knowing that, again, as different traditions say, there is a way to, but then is that really all that you want? Asking that question, or is there something in us that loves this wheel as of samsara, as they say in Buddhism? We love the highs and the lows. We love going through it. And again, there's no one view that's better than the other. It's just saying all of these views can be useful at different times. Sometimes, hey, I've had enough and I want to end this suffering thing. Beautiful. There is a path that we can walk to do that. But then once you're there, is that all you want? And knowing that then you can get back into the world and experience the dualities while you're here. And again, just having the flexibility of mind to be like, to know that there is no ultimate end goal to this place. It's just the more that we engage in the highs and the lows, or the more we engage in the highs and want those highs, the more lows we're going to feel. And we can start to, let go more, come to this flat line. And that's, another experience we can have. There's no right or wrong. It's just, again, listening to what do I want.
Thanks for mentioning that again, because I think this is like a super valuable point. A lot of people like can reflect on maybe in their own life and can maybe integrate more in their practice. So I hope that a lot of like young yoga teachers or people who start out with becoming yoga teachers getting into this podcast and listening like all these different, opinions. That's what I try to do here as well, to bring like so many different like perspectives and kind of views on the podcast to showcase, okay, even have like a certain kind of image about a thing doesn't mean necessarily it has to be what you feel about it. So to get back to another point, I really would like to talk about is like your ultra marathon you just ran, because this is like amazing shit. I was always dreaming about like doing something like this, and even like in Colorado, you must have like a backdrop amazingly.
Oh, it was so pretty.
Yeah, I can just imagine. But I think it's super interesting because it's even another thing that everything can be your own practice to experience life, and in the end, even this is like something which is like super hard. It's a suffering for sure. All the preparation, all the doing it itself. Even like you said, like your legs are feeling still like super hard, but you're doing it. And maybe you can walk us through this process of mind when you start. Okay, let's go for it.
Yeah, I mean, the person that I am, I've always loved and probably always will. I love intensity. I love intensity of highs, the intensity of lows. It's just who I am. My parents have said this. My friends have said this. Like, you're an all or nothing kind of guy. I'm very polarized in a lot of ways. And my buddy hit me up about running this race, and I don't even run like that. Like, I run occasionally. And I was like, screw it. I'm down. Like, it's just going to suck. But, like, I have a flavor for that pain. That pain feels not in a masochistic kind of way, but it feels good to push your body beyond what you think you can do. And when there's hundreds of people running with you, cheering you on, being like, oh, don't stop, you got this, you're not going to stop. And, when I was coming down this last stretch and my legs are like cramping, fried, my knees are like in so much pain, there's a guy behind me being like, oh, this is the last 2 miles, you got this. And,
Wow.
if I was running 30 miles, 10,000 feet of elevation gain by myself, I don't think I would have done it in that kind of time. But being able to, again, push the boundary of the mind is so beautiful and useful, I think. Because, like, for instance, look at something like ice baths, cold exposure. Until Wim Hof started doing this kind of thing, you're in ice, frozen water for 30 minutes, you're dead, and then Wim Hof starts to do it, and people are sitting in frozen water for 20, 30 minutes. And all of a sudden it's possible. Just like with running, 30 years ago, ultra running was not a thing. Like marathons were happening, and then all of a sudden people start to run 100-mile races, longer races than that. Now people are doing 250-mile races. So again, what is the limit of our physical potential, our spiritual potential, our psychological potential? Knowing that maybe we are creating glass ceilings on what we can accomplish. So then doing something like this ultra is like, can I break those glass ceilings? As much as the mind is like, I just give up, you don't want to do this. I mean, for me, it was never like that. I'm a psycho in some way. So I was like, I'm just going to keep going. But when the mind does say that, you still go. It's the same with meditation. It's the same with yoga. When you're like, I can't do this. This is too much. And you keep going. You're breaking that perceived limitation.
That's exactly what I was thinking, because I think there's so much in there. I think you can showcase that it's not just yoga, It can be like every kind of practice you choose, you bring your attention to, and you really come to this conclusion that you have to be just with your mind, and you just there's just this one thing, not your thoughts, nothing which distracts you. It's just you against you. And it's this point where you really see, okay, what I'm capable of doing, and what is really like, not just even like the ultimate limit, what's possible to be in cold water, or what is the world record in like ultra marathon, but what is my limit? What is what I'm able to do? All of this kind of experience, like Vipassana, would be super, super interesting for me. I hope to do it like end of the year. And the same, that's what got me hooked in Ashtanga. I think you would be like a super good Ashtanga yogi, by the way. With this psycho attitude, that could work. But it's interesting to showcase.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. I think, so a big thing for me is, what are these stories and the narratives that we are telling ourselves about ourselves and about our lives? Because we are constructing, often unconsciously, the limitations for ourselves. Where I'm like, if you say, oh, that girl would never like me, or I can't do that job, you never will be able to, because you're like setting an expectation that I can't do that. And then anyone who's ever achieved something great, or just even gotten the job that they wanted, or climbed a mountain, had first the idea that they could do it. There's a knowing that I can do this. I can talk to those really pretty chicks. I can get that job that I always wanted. Whatever it is. First, it starts in your head saying, I can do that. Not saying, oh, that's not me. Because when we say that's not me, that's not who I am, we're limiting ourselves. And I've had this thing of, how great could any human being be? That level of greatness that anyone can achieve, whether it's, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, I mean, that's basketball. But in any sport, any endeavor, if you want to be rich like Elon Musk, you can do it. And there's no wrong answers. It's just like, how great do you want to be? And are you limiting yourself? And if so, how can we loosen that limitation? How can we say, I can do that. I can be that. Knowing that the world is yours. But it has to start with knowing that it can be yours. Knowing that you can really achieve anything you want. And this is a blessing. My dad has always told me that. He was like propping me up since I was a kid, being like, you can do anything you want. And he meant it.
Yeah.
And he would say, he was just always like encouraging me like that. And it kind of instilled it into me, like, oh, I can. It's just like, do I think I can? And then applying that to my life, when I don't think I can do something, I really can't. And when I think I can, you might surprise yourself and you might achieve those things that you thought once were unachievable. And again, it starts psychologically, and then the body,
Mhm.
like running an ultra, will rise to the occasion.
Mhm.
Talking to chicks, you might just spit some really clean game out of nowhere, and it's just because you thought it was possible, because you thought you had that confidence. And
Mhm.
it's like that. So again, this is a big thing for me. What I want to bring into the world is just like really looking at our assumptions for what I'm capable of. How do you know
Yeah.
that's all you're capable of? Are you sure? Is that what you want? And really examining this, not to say that you have to remove those boundaries, but just to be like, how solid are they? And just asking
I
that
think
question.
I think this is like the real interesting part. It doesn't matter in which kind of practice, but just having or freeing yourself from this like state of mind that you can't do a thing. It doesn't even just give you the first hand the opportunity to reach a goal or to make it possible to reach that, but it gives you the ultimate freedom to choose. Even on
Mm,
the other hand, if you really want to do that, right? If
mm,
you really want to be that rich, you want to have this, you can have it.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
if you
mm-hmm,
really if you really want it, you can have it, but then you can decide, right? Because before, you're always like in the craving of, oh, I would love to have done this, or I would have a business, or I would like to do this or that, or for example, in like Ashtanga, I would be able to like doing Kapotasana or doing like the second or the third series in Ashtanga. And it's always this kind of mindset, which is again like an attachment. It's not freeing you. It's not bringing you closer to who you really are. And I think
mm-hmm,
these extreme situations, doesn't matter if ice bath, ultramarathon, or even like doing a certain kind of yoga, brings you so close to like what's really, really there, and nothing
mm-hmm,
else, and not my thoughts, not what distracts me. It's just about me and what I really want. And
mm-hmm,
this is
mm-hmm.
like super interesting.
And that's, yeah, no, and that's like, again, such a big question for me is, what do I
Mm-hmm.
really want? If you want the money, there's nothing wrong with that, but why? Is it power? Is it
Mm-hmm.
security? Is it, a lot of pleasant, pleasurable experiences? Like, what do you actually want? And then maybe going a little bit deeper is like, what does the pleasure give me? Do I just want these highs, or like maybe digging a little deeper? Do I want something like peace? Do I want a beautiful life? Do I want to feel really connected to myself and the people around me? And becoming clear on this question of what do I want? Because that's a prerequisite first too, because a lot of people you ask that question to and they couldn't really tell you. Sometimes they just say, oh, I want money, I want to have the security, I want to go on this vacation, but what's underlying these things? And becoming
Mm-hmm.
clear of like, what do I want? And for me, it's like something like being of service. I want to use this life to help people, and that's really deep for me. That's like, I mean, it's so beautiful actually when you can hold a view like that. It's enriching for me. It gives my life meaning. And that's what I want. That's part of it. I want to experience beauty in all of its
For
domains. I want to
sure.
experience the highs, the lows, the full spectrum of experience, like you said with that Nietzsche quote. And yeah, just see what's possible with the mind, see what's possible with the body. Use this life to explore and to serve.
Mm-hmm.
That's just me. But I've done, again, a lot of thinking, a lot of contemplating these questions because they're important. I think
Mm-hmm.
that they're necessary if we're going to live a happy, fulfilling life, that we have to ask these questions and sit with them. Don't try to answer them in a
Mm-hmm.
day. It has to be, and they evolve over a lifetime. What do I want? And just continuing to ask that question.
Yeah, this is a great point. This is really great because I think even nowadays society primes us to have like a solution now.
Mm-hmm.
Your parents
Mm-hmm.
ask you, what do you want to do in life? You have to answer now. You have to decide right after school, what do you want to study? And you should not change your career path if you're in that. And I think what really helps me or a lot of other people when I see my students in classes, that they use this kind of toolkit of like a constant kind of practice, building consistency in the kind of practice. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to do Ashtanga, you have to do yoga, maybe meditation, just do something for yourself to like clear your mind, find this space to listen to yourself. And even like you said, maybe go a bit deeper and
Mm,
see, oh wow, what lies behind that, and
mm,
understand how your self functions.
mhm, mhm. And again, tuning into the subtlety of our
Mhm,
experience, because again, these things are like the subtle currents that are driving us, and a lot of the time we're unaware of it. So through a practice like yoga, like meditation, we can start to slow down the mind so that we can see these things clearly. The metaphor I
mhm,
always use is it's like you're on a train or a bus and it's moving too fast. So you look out the window and it's just a blur. Like I don't even know what's going on. And once the bus or the train slows down, you see what's outside. You see the city or you see the forest. You see it clearly. But you have to slow down the mind through whatever practice. You know, it can be obviously meditation or yoga or like playing music. Anything that helps you focus to keep the mind from
mhm,
being scattered, then you can get a certain degree of clarity on your experience, and really then from that place drop that question in, what do I want, with that clarity present, and you will get interesting answers, is what I've found. And it's, again, this is a practice, and it's like and it builds over a lifetime, but yeah, it's a beautiful thing to just be able to ask that question. And it can also be
mhm.
scary when,
Yeah.
this culture is telling you, oh, you should want these things, you should want this
Mhm,
money, you should want this, that, the other thing. And it also kind of induces a state of fear, a state of scarcity, because, oh, if you don't have these things, you don't have this car, then you're not going to be enough, then if you don't have this job, then you're never going to find a partner, and you're never, if you don't buy this makeup, you'll never be pretty enough. And this is how capitalism works, to kind of instill this fear in people, so that there's a sense of lack. And it's just conditioned.
mhm.
It's not inherently there. It could
Yeah.
be from the whole original sin kind of narrative coming from dominant Christianity in the West too. But like all of this sense of lack that feels so intrinsic to a lot of our experiences in the West. It's just, I feel like I'm not enough. I know so
Mhm,
many people that say that. It's so common, and it's not inherently a part of life. It's a conditioned experience. And when you realize that, we can start to work with it. We can start to deconstruct this conditioned, built up narrative, deconstruct it, and then replace it, construct new narratives that are more beautiful, expansive, liberating, freeing, all of these things. Again, but it's like, again, like I said, a lot of it starts with first seeing that, oh, this view
mhm,
that I have about myself, about the world, is not objectively real. It's a conditioned experience. And that takes, again, a lot of time, a lot of practice, seeing for yourself, a lot of tuning into the subtlety of how I'm constructing my experience right now in very, very,
mhm.
very quick ways. How the mind is constructing, like at nanoseconds, your experience. And this is what can
Yeah.
lead to very deep levels of freedom, very deep levels of just seeing clearly, oh, the mind made this up. This is not really how it
Mhm,
is. This is just a construct. When you see it for yourself, you're free. But it takes some time. Again, I can say these words and it might resonate with some people, and I think it probably will, because something in you knows. But then it's an element of, I have to see it for myself. Most people will have
mhm.
to. I found I needed to do the practices to see it for myself. And once I did, I was like, oh, it's been verified. And yep, and
Yeah.
then it's to not just deconstruct the conditioned narratives, but to build new narratives, to build new stories, new experiences of who I experience myself to be, what I
Mhm,
experience this world to be. That it's not just, science and matter. Can it be more beautiful than that? Is maybe the scientific view that our culture holds to be so real just a limited, reductionist kind of perspective of this infinite place? We're reducing it to just explainable by science. There's an
mhm,
element of, again, freedom to choose. Do I want to believe that view? What's the impact of just believing that this materialist, scientific, reductionist perspective is ultimately real? How does that impact my experience? For me, for instance, I found that view leads to a sense of like flatness. The depth and the beauty that can be experienced, the soul of this world, is almost
mhm.
stifled, because it's just protons, electrons, and chaos and gravity, and which
Yeah.
is, I don't want to talk, I'm not talking down on science. I just want to say that it can reduce our experience here to something that the soul might feel like is a cage. And the spirit, listening to your body, how do I feel when I'm trying on that narrative? For me, it felt like I was trapped. I don't want to
Hmm.
just believe this is science. My spirit, my soul was like, no, please, we need something else. And
Give me something else. Yeah.
exactly. And then working to, like, again, see this
Hmm.
conditioned narrative, to deconstruct it, and then to choose, what does my soul want to create? Knowing that we are creating and discovering this world that we're walking through, often unconsciously, and using the mind to construct a more beautiful world, a more beautiful sense of self, knowing that that is
Hmm.
purely a construct as well, that we get to create any experience that we want. And again, this, I'm just highlighting this to point out that this is possible. It's hard to do, but through the right practices, there is a way to see this for yourself and to make this a reality. And that's what I want to bring into this world with, I mean, this life, honestly.
I really resonate with that, and I think for me it makes absolutely sense. So, do you have a kind of self practice which you are doing like on a consistent base to get this kind of worldview, or get this kind of like, let's say, kind of freedom in your day to day?
Yeah, so for me, I mean, daily meditation. I meditate once or twice a day for,
Mhm.
depends what's going on, 30 to 45 minutes a session. Because again, just to stabilize and still the mind. I do yoga a few
Mhm.
times a week, for about 30 to 45 minutes. Again, I learned this flow at this ashram I was at in India, and I've just been doing it ever
Yeah.
since. Um, and I listen. I try to slow down and simplify. When my life feels like there's a lot of suffering, a lot of resistance, you can feel it in the body, and you're like, "What's going on right now?"
Mhm.
And that's when I need to simplify, being like, what views, what narratives, what concepts am I really believing right now? Whether about myself, about my life, about what I need, about what I should be doing. And then just asking the question, is this real? Do I need to do these things? Is this what's going to make me happy? Just asking these questions. And
Yeah.
again, it's something that is refined and built over a lifetime. And I've been, again, I feel like legitimately blessed enough to have seen this at a young age, but again, I still get trapped in suffering, like, regularly. And that's a part of it. This life is a maze. But through those
Yeah.
experiences of really being in pain, then
Mhm.
I get to become more intimate with it. I get to learn how to navigate it, to learn, oh, what am I holding on to right now? Or what am I, again, really believing right now? And this is how I've been able to
Mhm.
learn these amazing things, which is through experiencing a lot of pain, actually, a lot of suffering, a
Yeah.
lot of lack. And so I would say life is a teacher in a sense. Like, the practices, again, help stabilize the mind, loosen the body, and the help push yourself too. I think exercise is very useful, obviously, but
Mhm.
life will, again, always teach you. And it's through that pain that we get to learn how to navigate those difficult experiences. We learn how to get more agency over our experience. So, yeah.
I see. Yeah, I see it. Like I said again, I can just resonate with that, and I think this is like something everybody can like, even if they're a beginner yoga teacher or just practitioner, or everybody who has like this kind of feeling from time to time can
Hmm.
integrate this in their day to day life.
Hmm.
And this was an amazing talk, man.
Yeah,
So
no, absolutely. Likewise.
thank you
Yeah,
so much.
of course. I would love to do some more, but whenever. This was really fun.
Yeah. Yeah, man, definitely. So I already plan like new episodes, like people bringing back and maybe making some more live shit. So
Hmm.
I will be definitely down for that.
Amazing.
Yeah. So if people now would like to get to know more about you or would like to get in touch with you, what is the best way they can find you?
Yeah, the best way would be on Instagram. That's kind of where
Mm-hmm.
I'm posting a lot of my content right now, and my handle is Duff Daddy 100. So that's
I will
DuffDaddy
link it below as well in the
100.
episode.
Yep, yep. And that's the best way to. If you have questions or want to get in touch, feel free to DM me. And yeah, more content to come. I'm trying to make a website sometime soon. Yeah.
And that's great. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this conversation and hope to
Yeah.
hear you soon.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye. And we are out again. I think there was a lot in there. I hope you guys can like really let this settle down in you and you can take something out of this, not just like for your practice on the mat, but for the rest of your life. And yeah, I'm super down to have Ben again on the podcast. If you want that as well, just leave a comment below. And if you want like to make an Instagram reel, Instagram live with him, just let me know. I'm always down to try to connect people and to make it work. So would be super nice. Guys, thank you so much for like sticking around until here. What should I say? I'm super grateful. I'm super thankful for all of you, like making it possible for me to live my Dharma. Most people don't know how this podcast thing works, so it's not paid at all. We don't get like any advertisement money because at this moment I don't feel like really that I want to have brands doing like advertisement in the podcast because that's not what the podcast is about. And so it's like a lot of work, a lot of like time I'm like investing here. And even like now, two friends of mine are working on the podcast as well. They're scheduling, they're making emails, and like we're trying to make the best out of it. So if you want to support the project, the best way, the really, really best way is to share this podcast, share it on Instagram, share it on your social, share it with friends who could be interested. It really means the world to me. Thank you so much and have a great week. We hear each other next week. Bye.